Sunday night, November 24th. Americans all over the country tuned in as the prosecutor of Missouri announced the grand jury decision. Officer Darren Wilson would not be indicted in the killing of Michael Brown. To be clear, the decision to forego a trial basically meant that this young man's death was not worth a conversation, even. And Ferguson erupted. We are reminded of Reverend King's big words in the wake of the riots he witnessed. He said, "But it is not enough for me to stand before you tonight and condemn riots. It would be morally irresponsible for me to do that without at the same time condemning the contingent, intolerable conditions that exist in our society. These conditions are the things that cause individuals to feel that they have no other alternative than to engage in violent rebellions to get attention. And I must say tonight that a riot is the language of the unheard." So ends the quote. The riots were unfortunate for a range of reasons. Among those is that the violence caused distraction from the central point. An 18-year-old unarmed black man was shot 11 times by a police officer and left to lie in the street for 4.5 hours. Last week was Thanksgiving. A full week for many, your minister included. And while I watched that press conference on Monday night, my friend Kathleen and I were texting each other, and she texted, "Stuff planned by you?" And I explained that I had contacted 2 organizations that I assumed would be planning stuff. And to my surprise, both said that they were focused on other things, but that they'd come if I organized something. Now, you all know that I have a fervent commitment to justice, but truth be told, I may have wanted that grand jury to do the right thing as much because on the Monday before Thanksgiving, my fervent commitment to Thanksgiving may have equaled my fervent commitment to justice. I was looking ahead to a joyfully jam-packed holiday weekend. My family hosts family that come in from out of town for a Thanksgiving extravaganza that begins on Wednesday night and concludes on Saturday morning. And traditionally, I tie up loose ends here at All Souls on Tuesday before Thanksgiving, after which in the late afternoon and night, I organize, I grocery shop, because on Wednesday, I step into no rooms that are not a kitchen. I had no time to organize stuff. So all this minutia is floating through my head as the prosecutor is speaking, as Kathleen is asking me what is going on in New London, and the minutia is captured in this one text. I pulled together an event last week with 3 days' notice. Maybe a vigil. Hate to work alone on this one. You see, I'm all over the place. I'm tired. I'm anticipating more tired in the days to come if I lose my focus. And then, thank God, I snap out of it. By 11 o'clock, I have emailed local colleagues. I have formulated a ghost of a plan that I am sure will grow bones by the morning. A minister's central responsibility is to pay attention, to be present for every major and minor detail that calls us to respond as people of faith, to be present to every major and minor detail that helps us to make meaning. That's the thing that is different about my job and practically every other job in the galaxy. I'd say that the only similar job is that of a comedian. Only a comedian is on stage going for truth and laughs. And I'm in the pulpit going for truth and transformation. And laughs. My friend Ann Scheidner, organizer and friend extraordinaire, agrees to help. Arlene is ready to do what needs doing as ever. And together with the support of the mayor's office, and yes, the New London Police, we pull it together. Because I snapped out of it. Because I heard my own fearful and nervous voice whining about my busy day. Until myself, as minister, pushed that girl aside. We must be present in this moment in our shared history. We must pay attention. We must be present, and we must be willing and then able to debunk the stunning flat trap that people are saying. Amen. I attended the NAACP Freedom Fund dinner on Friday night. I wanted to go to this event because Don Wilson, the local NAACP chapter president, was an excellent speaker at the rally that I helped organize this past summer, and he was equally excellent and supportive at the vigil Tuesday night. So Kate Treadwell Hill and I once got dressed up and we headed to the Holiday Inn together. Kate's husband, Bob, of blessed memory, had served on the NAACP board. The keynote speaker was Bill Dyson. He was the state representative of the 94th District for 32 years, and now he is a professor of public policy and practical politics at Central. He told a story about his class that met on Thursday night. Here is that story. He made the decision that he wouldn't bring up the protests that were happening all over the country. He would see if any of his students would do so on their own volition. Professor Dyson told us that the class's textbook this semester is The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, read by many of us. He waited, and finally he said, "Anything you want to ask me?" Silence. "Anything you want to talk about? Maybe the protests?" Silence. He surmised that his students were afraid to speak. Years of conditioning brought that fear, he said. But finally they did speak up, and they discussed, and it was good. And then finally, one student asked the professor, "How do you feel, Professor?" "Thank you a lot for asking," he said. "I'm pissed." And because he had established a trusting relationship with his students, they knew that they did not need to fear his anger. For his is the clean and efficient fuel of righteous anger. And many Americans share this feeling. Now, you may have read that a Stonington school official called the decision to cancel a class trip to New York City a no-brainer. You may have read that. But actually, let's put some brains on this one. What are we afraid of? Are we afraid of anger, even anger that is merited? Many of us are adverse to confrontation. I understand that. But anger moves us to action. Anger that shakes up the status quo. Let's harness that anger. Let's teach our children that there are times, and this is one of them, that we best put anger to good use. There was at least one student at Stonington High School that went to the vice principal and said, "Let's get on the bus. Let's go to the protests." And that student was Spencer Mangiacotti. If we are not going to get on the bus to go to a show and then go out to eat, let's talk to our students about what's going on in New York City and why. And then as families, let's get ourselves to these protests. And if there are none planned in southeastern Connecticut, let's plan them here. There is plenty of anger going on. No small portion of the anger is from white folks who deny that there is a problem at all. All of the fuss, stirring the pot, fanning the flames. Why? Do you know how tough it is to be a cop? If they hadn't been resisting arrest, if he hadn't been a thug, if his parents hadn't been in trouble with the law, we've heard it all. Denial. Perhaps you are in denial that there is a problem with denial. But if you want to see anger and denial on full, unabashed display, You need only read the online comments that followed the vigil coverage in the day. I usually don't read the comments, but I had a sermon to write, and I knew that I would find there a treasure trove of material to make this very point, and the comments did not disappoint. So I share these as examples of denial. Denial that we see race in this country, that systems of racism are firmly in place. Comment number 1. Reading the article where Don Wilson talks about equal treatment from police, one question I have is, when is the NAACP going to be happy? Where is the line that white people have to cross in order for the black community to say, hey, we did it? Just what I thought. It will never happen. There will never be satisfaction in the black community. These silent protests mean nothing to me except that the protesters for equal treatment will also be the ones to continue the racism in this country. Color was not an issue in the Ferguson shooting. The shooting of this thug should not be the grounds for equality. Next comment. Pockets of racism exist now and will always exist. The extent of racism that hucksters like Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, and al. proclaim does not. These two charlatans make an extreme amount of money conning foolish people into thinking that it does. The president and his attorney general, as well as the liberal media, help feed that mindthink. Racism buys votes, it makes money, and sells newspapers. The above people need racism, and if it doesn't exist, they must make the minorities think it does. Next comment. Why did the day stoke the racial division by putting that racist sign in front and center, by promoting that divisive placard? Shameful. Note, it seems that the racist sign to which the writer refers was our Standing on the Side of Love banner. Next comment. Every article or news piece describes the killing of an unarmed teenager, suggesting that if one is not armed, you couldn't possibly inflict serious physical injury or death upon another person. The fact is, unarmed people kill others with their bare hands every day in our country. End of comment. Which, of course, in the wake of Eric Garner's chokehold death, is the most ironic of statements. There is no time this morning to deconstruct each of these claims, but the denial each of them pronounce is right out there. And it is everywhere, not just on the day comment line. These are the consistent comments from those who are fearful of the legitimate anger that comes in the wake of injustice in Ferguson, Staten Island, Cleveland, and our entire beloved but flawed country. These are the consistent comments from those who fear any loss of perceived privilege. And for those who read and hear these type of comments, and there isn't a single soul in this sanctuary who does not, what do we say in response? What do we do in response? How do we accept our responsibility as people of faith who covenant to honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person, who covenant to honor justice, equity, compassion, and human relations, and who honor the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all? How do we accept these responsibilities and respond? Because sitting silent in the classroom before the question is unacceptable. I will take some time to deconstruct the following email, however. This email came to Arlene in response to the e-blast that went out last Tuesday announcing the Black Lives Matter vigil. Arlene, bless her heart, forwarded it to me without comment. It reads, and this helps how? Nobody made a statement that Black lives don't matter. Have you made an informed decision that the system and the jury were wrong in their assessment of the facts, and you base this on ... question mark. You are simply fueling the fire, for shame. So let's have a go at this one. Every shooting of a black or brown individual who is unarmed, when any amount of reasoning might have prevented the tragedy, every time when in the aftermath the justice system is lined up so that prosecutors are in charge of prosecuting the very people, the police, with whom they otherwise work closely. Every time this happens, it is a clear statement that for far too many Americans, black lives don't matter. Or at least they matter way less than white lives. What do I base these responses on? I am present. I pay attention. I spend a lot of time reading and listening and learning. I am a person of faith who believes that all lives are inherently worthy. Therefore, they matter. But to become enraged, in this instance by the phrase, Black Lives Matter, is to dismiss the very real and lived experience of Black people in this country. Was the jury wrong in their assessment? Tragically, probably not. But what is wrong is the system in which they set upon their task. The decision may have been legal, but it certainly was not moral. That is what must change. Am I fueling the fire? No. Injustice is fueling this national, long overdue injustice and response. To sit in silence is to fuel the fire. To do nothing is to fuel the fire. For shame, indeed. Denial that racism is alive and well, for shame. Fear of righteous anger, for shame. Our silence, for shame. But shame, though, is not a great motivator. As an Italian Catholic woman, believe me. Righteous anger, love is the key, said Dr. King, right? These are far more effective. We have great love in our hearts and in this room, and that love and anger moves us to pay attention, to be present, to show up in whatever capacity that we are able. We must show up, and for what will certainly be a very long haul. W.E. Du Bois, in the chalice lighting we read together, said, task after task, day after day. So think about the people of color who you know and admire and respect and love. Let's imagine souls among us, in fact. Let's consider the James Carnes kids, in fact. If you know and love the James Carnes family as much as I do, let's use that love to get ourselves to the vigil, to sign the petition, to make the call, to stop our dearly beloved or casual acquaintances when they speak nonsense like the nonsense I shared with you today. Let us use that love to motivate us. In the flurry of righteousness that flooded Facebook the day after the announcement, here's what Jessica James Carnes had to say, and I share this with you with her permission. If you think my children are precious and adorable and so sweet, and you also think it's all right for unarmed children to be killed by the police, we have a problem. It is not a policing problem. The police are not hatched from the special police farm. The police are us. We have a problem, folks. Guess what? It's not a new problem. It's been going on continuously and mostly without media coverage for centuries, said Jessica. And now I want you to imagine those precious and adorable and sweet children. Isis, Yemaya, Olorun, Sati. And I want you to imagine the other children of color who are growing up in the warm embrace of this faith community. Among them, Nick, Ella, Joe, Claudia, Jennifer, Evan, Jasmine, and my daughter, Lily Jim. And I want you to do something that will help ensure that their futures are free of catastrophe. Start here. If you weren't at the vigil last week, ask yourself why not. If you haven't been paying much attention to the events of this past week, ask yourself why not. If As you sat at your Thanksgiving table and your mother said to your activist cousin, "And this helps how?" Nobody made a statement that Black lives don't matter. Have you made an informed decision that the system and the jury were wrong in their assessment of the facts, and you based this on? You are simply fueling the fire. For shame. Ask yourself why you didn't respond. If you're so angry right now and you'd like to walk out, ask yourself why. Oh, friends, this isn't the sermon I wanted to preach today. I had a different story I wanted to tell you about presence, this month's ministry theme. But instead, I had to tell you a story about a different kind of presence. On this historic day in our congregation's history, I wanted to be all pastoral and understanding about the vote we're about to take. I wanted to honor our ancestors, but to do so as we are meant to do is perhaps the greatest honor of all. When we are living in a tough town, we are called to be tougher. We have to be willing to show up, even when it means living in uncomfortable and creative tension. We are called to work toward a day when we let fall this and all sorts of American sermons in order to take in the ordinariness of an ordinary Sunday, our neighbors living in peace, and our children, all of our children, free of all catastrophe.